Hello and welcome to this snap episode of Pause with Nandini. I have Chinky Sinha here with me, who is from Bihar, and I want to hear her perspective on a few things that are going on that have really caught the imagination, I think, of people. And of course, we're talking about Prashant Kishore today. And on 3rd of August, the Jan Suraj Party founder, Prashant Kishore, he won the Bankipur Assembly by-election in Patna. He defeated the BJP's Neeraj Kumar Sinha by more than 19,000 votes. And this was his first electoral contest as a candidate and the party's first ever seat in the Bihar Legislative Assembly. And it ended the BJP's hold on Bankipur, a seat that the party had dominated for more than 3 decades. And that itself has been a bit of a shocker for people. But the win is striking because of what preceded it as well. In the November 2020 Bihar Assembly elections, the Jan Suraj contested 238 of the 243 seats, failed to win even one seat, and finished with a vote share of roughly 2%. So after that, this Bankipur seems like a comeback story. It created a little bit of a tremor everywhere, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. Kishore himself has framed the result as a message rather than a personal milestone. He's calling it a wake up call for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and saying that voters are rejecting arrogance and they want to rise above caste. How true this is remains to be seen. But we will now ask Chinky, and hello, Chinky. There's so much to talk about, but give me a sense of what your reading is of this development. Let's begin there.
See, my reading is that Bakipur is a very urban constituency also, right? It's mostly middle class, upper caste, that demographic, right? So there's a lot. I mean, obviously, it's a shocker in a way, but the reasons I think that people are attributing to it are not the only reasons. There is a reason of this anger of BJP kind of, and that's a general anger I'm saying amongst people about how BJP basically removed Nitish Kumar, and they always suspected some conspiracy and all that, and how they got Samrat Chaudhary with all this and in fact, Prashant Kishore was very vocal during last elections because I attended several press conferences about Samrat Chaudhary being the accused in the Shilpi Jain rape and murder case, who was also my school senior in St. Joseph's Convent and Women's College. In fact, I wrote about that rape case when it happened, the gang rape case, because it kind of changed a lot of things for us in the 90s, right? And she was a couple senior to me, and I saw her that day in the morning. And by evening, everything had changed. It was the first time that candlelit march, like these marches happened in Patna. In the beginning, he was attacking RJD a lot, right? If you remember, now we pass for Tejasvi and all of that. And he was like talking about education, and which is great.
Yeah.
One should talk about education, one should talk about migration, one should talk about everything. In my opinion, what didn't happen in the last election is that he didn't talk about caste. I mean, a lot of people would say that why caste should be talked about, and I feel that it should be talked about, especially Bihar. Most elections have been fought on the basis of caste, and caste and class are interrelated, right? So I think that there was no space for this kind of politics to emerge at that point in time. I think the small window that happened was in 2020 when Tejasvi led the whole thing and they won, that time when they said that you create jobs and migrant workers. That was the COVID time. That was the first elections during COVID when Bihar went to elections. Now, the other thing that I think is very interesting to look at in Prashant Kishore's victory is that he also comes from upper caste, right? For the longest time, for 40 years, the politics of Bihar has been ruled by two very big faces like Lalu and Nitish. Both of them came from the OBC cadre, like the caste, and both of them were using the planks of social justice, right? And Lalu's time was especially very violent. And I think this election, when we were on the ground, we also looked at the composition and the interesting caste coalitions. Now, a lot of it is to say that Bihar has moved on in a way from that
Mm.
social engineering to a different kind of social engineering now, right? So the affiliations are more transactional now rather than ideology based. And that is one thing. And I think one of the factors was also because a lot of people were dissatisfied that Samrat Chaudhary was not upper caste.
Mm.
And the BJP, which fielded around 83. candidates that were, or what, 78 or something like that. And I have the numbers, but BJP being like seen as an upper caste kind of party did betray the upper caste who have been feeling a lot of angst in those 40 years that they have not gotten representation. Although their percentage seems to be around 10 point some percentage only. But you see, in Bihar, the power doesn't work like that. It works through land, through class and all of that. So I think that is one other factor. I think it's also like a vengeance thing, upper caste, right? And who better than Prashant Kishore? Also remember, Prashant Kishore did not contest the last two times, and he announced at the last time from the two seats that he announced he would contest, right? And the party failed to get any seats because I don't think there was any space. The third thing was like people were also very kind to Nitish Kumar, saying that this is his last term, we'll give him a good farewell. So all of these things together, I think it would be very simplistic to just see Prashant Kishore's win as, something, I mean, as big as heralding change. Like a lot of people on the ground did say that Prashant Kishore himself showed a lot of arrogance during the campaigns and whatnot. And I had met him briefly during 25 elections. I think maybe he learned that this is not the way to go in Bihar. See, there is change because if you see, like I was at Jantar Mantar for 3 days, but I mean, I have gone to all the protests and Bihar also, I went the other day. See, there is a general dissatisfaction, right? There's a general hopelessness. What I saw in 2025 was people saying things like, "Koi bhi aayega, hamara kya hi hoga," right? Now, with all the protests, there's one thing that very significant is that we see that, we have always experienced the price that one pays for saying something, right? Like I have paid the price, many others have paid the price. And not to say that victims or anything, but that's how the system became. You could not criticize anybody. You had to toe the line. If you didn't toe the line, you pay whatever. Now with Gen Z protests, what has happened is that you are seeing people just talking. They are speaking up against the system. They are saying all that. And obviously the consequences have been there for them also, but they're not stopping at it. Now that's very interesting because at least they've shown that you can speak up, right? Which was something which was so dormant for the last 10 to 12 years that we saw the whole media turning kind of very docile and submissive in a way that also they joined the Carters, in fact, right? That's one significant change. And I think, in fact, I met 2 days ago, I met these two very young students, 18-year-olds from, I think, Sasaram in Bihar. They were very articulate about it. So they said ki, so we were talking and I said, Ayodhya se bhi to paise chori ho gaye, ye wo. He said, देखिए हिंदू का देश है तो मंदिर तो बनाना चाहिए लेकिन वो मंदिर का whatever the money that you get from the temple donations and all should be used to build hospitals and schools. Now that I thought was a very interesting point coming from somebody that young, right? Because I think they understand politics in a very different way than I think my generation did, right? Our generation was more about social justice, secularism, or I mean, whoever was on this side, whoever, like, I think this generation looks at it very differently. I think it's not about, which is the most beautiful thing, it's not about religion, it's not about caste, although caste has to figure because, mostly the people who are going for these examinations are coming from very disenfranchised backgrounds, and mostly those backgrounds. Also, very interestingly, a whole lot of conversation are again emerging about reservation. I was at a dinner the other day and there was a lot of conversation about reservation and people were saying, why do you need reservation? Now, this kind of conversation happened. I grew up in Bihar during the Mandal time. So these kinds of things were always simmering in the background. And I think what Gen Z, this whole thing has given people is that you are not going to get things just sitting there. So you have to get out on the streets and you have to ask for it. Now, that itself opens up a lot of possibilities in terms of political affiliations, choices, whatever. And as JDU declines, which it will, I mean, there will be a vacuum. Prashant Kishore will move in, right? For the fact that I am actually personally saying very not like disappointed in Tejasvi in a way that he should have been there, right? I mean, they did not work really hard. Maybe there was some kind of conversation to make Prashant Kishore win the seat or something, but whatever it was, I think some of that reflected. A lot of these people who vote from Bakipur, they have children studying else. They probably were BJP supporters. Of course, they were because in upper caste of Bihar are always mostly BJP supporters. And so that is changing. I don't know where like it will go, because Bakipur is a very small area that also you're looking at. I mean, it doesn't speak for the whole state, because elsewhere in the state, caste dynamics coming to play and all of that. So that I
Right.
think a little bit, of course, it has affected people, because Prashant Kishore did talk about education. He did talk about fixing the system, although he didn't say how. But
One
yeah,
of the
that happened.
things, one of the things also is, again, we have a tendency to fixate on a person, right? As if they've got one magic wand that can change things. So, what do you think about the party itself? Do you think the party that's just dissolved its units, can they rebuild fast enough to be substantial? And is Bihar ready for this sort of third front?
I think Bihar, if not ready now, it will be ready very soon. This is my personal whatever feeling that I'm getting. Also, I feel that he can rebuild the party, because sometimes you need just one push, right? And this is a big thing for them, that Prashant Kishore himself got his feet dirty in the
Right.
mud, right? In the sense that he did not put up a candidate, because it's a formidable thing, right, to go into the BJP guard,
Yeah.
especially at a time like this, and kind of register a win for a party that actually lost all the seats in the past
Just
elections, given the fact that he himself predicted that we will either get 10% or like whatever, or we will form the government. The claims were very big, right? And became a laughing stock later, right? So I think sometimes I feel in politics you can't write off anybody, and you can't do hero worship also, because that's a very, like, we have been seeing the dangers of that. But I think Prashant Kishore is charismatic for sure. He
Mhm.
has that stature for sure. Things that could work against him, probably, as I would see in a state like Bihar, is his caste, probably.
Right.
But also, in interestingly, it also works for him in terms of the BJP situation, because
Right.
the-
Right.
and in
Mhm.
many ways, when we were covering Bihar elections, when I was at Outlook that time and I was discussing it with someone, and I said, it seems to me this election is the return of the upper caste. And they said, yeah, but of course you can't put that in the headline, I mean, the cover line. And I said, why not? It's like, because, in every which way that is correct. Because if you look at the coalitions, the numbers
Mhm.
itself will tell you, right?
That's where it is.
The one most interesting thing I came across was, the number of Bahubalis that they fielded, like the criminal politicians. Now, the numbers are kind of like they blamed RJD, but they have similar numbers. And the upper caste are called Bahubalis, but the lower caste ones will be called Dakats or Bagis. Now, that is something that has been going on for a long time. So I think for Prashant Kishore, it would be challenging, but he can rebuild.
Mm.
He's from Bihar. The state is
Yeah.
ready for a new conversation. As I said, it's now more transactional politics. If you look at the social engineering now, where JDU has also given tickets to upper caste and
Mm.
different OBCs and EBCs and all that, EWS, where RJD is still banking on the MY coalition, seems to not be working so much in their favor. I think they lack a charismatic leader.
And yes, you can't undermine the sort of the power of a charismatic leader. One of the things that struck with me was that, now more and more we are seeing, like we saw with Mamdani in the US, for instance, bread and butter issues, everyday issues, respect for the common man, right? And one of the speeches he made was about why a worker from Bihar is going and working in Gujarat for half of what a worker from Gujarat would get paid, and why, because of that labor pool, there is no investment in growing industry in Bihar. And he was questioning that. So he was saying, why are we doing this? Why are our children working for such little money in other states? And why are we not building capacity in our own state? So there's sort of like self assertion, but linked not just to something very abstract, but linked to something that is very relatable to the common man. That I think is quite powerful to see whether that translates.
Well, but that is not a new conversation. See, that's what I'm saying. We are crediting Prashant Kishore with a lot that is. I mean, I just as somebody, I'm not an academic for sure. I've just been on the ground. The RJD raised this
Mm.
during COVID, right? That time, Nitish Kumar, if you remember, stopped migrants from entering Bihar. This
Yes,
was
yes.
the COVID time, right? And I was there on the ground. It was horrible, but there was nothing being done. Like few months later, when I went back to report during the elections, that time, the migrant workers were there. They were forced to go back. There was nothing to do. They were all sitting under trees or in open fields. There was nothing to eat. Whatever, like dignity, I think needs to be looked at. It's a plank of social justice as well, right? I mean, and
course.
where you talk about dignity, it's not just about fixing somebody's income or anything like that, but also caste. I mean, a lot of dignity in India is still tied to the caste
And-
dynamic. That's what I'm saying. Ki for Prashant Kishore to not address caste, I
Mhm.
think it might. As a suggestion, if I were to say, should look at it. Invariably, I have seen in my journalism or whatever reportage that caste and class are mixed. Now, factories were there in Bihar. They got shut down. People have been raising this question. In Mukama and all, if you see a lot of these empty factories, the lands are being leased out to big companies for 1 rupee or whatever. And that's what is happening, right? So, see, to talk about these things is easy, right? But
What
how is he
action
going to
will
do that?
Mhm.
No, also I think a plan. I mean, what I
Mhm.
have seen that nobody gives a plan. Nobody says exactly how they're going to do it. They just talk big things, but the reality is that Bihar is considered as a feeder state. It's a migrant,
That's what he was
yeah,
saying.
like Jharkhand, extraction economy. I mean, so you need to have workers coming from somewhere. And that's why no attempt has been made. So why do we have to leave? Like I'm from Bihar. Why do we leave? There is nothing over here.
Right.
So I feel that some of that needs to change and people need to draw plans for that. I mean, I just saw some posters where they've announced that open this sugar factory, that sugar factory. But we'll see.
Yes. Because
Yeah.
I'm from Bengal, I somehow always feel like, twin destinies of Bihar and
Yeah.
Bengal and how they emerge, right? There's so much of connection there. That's a different conversation. But what I wanted to end with is I always want to know, like, what is the perspective of the women, right? And it's obviously it's not a monolith, but when you talk about everyday issues, how are women sort of reacting? Do you see which we saw with the protests, at least with the student protests, that a lot of young women really took center stage in leadership, right? Do you see that as a sort of a new wave? Do you see hope in women in Bihar sort of leading any sort of different thinking, different change, being given opportunities or making opportunities for themselves?
I don't know. I mean, see, I'll answer this question. Okay. I'm yet to see a lot of political representation or opportunities that will be given to women, right? And the simple thing is that if you look at any industry, let's say glass ceiling is for real. Media, for instance, which shapes a lot of conversation, doesn't have many women, or at least in the leadership roles. The women are relegated to lifestyle or whatever health and education that they think are the male editors think are like not very sexy beats. So I'm saying that it's a chronic problem. I mean, you have to fix that. Otherwise, you will only see male heroes emerge and women will have to kind of like, be on the sidelines. If you see any poster, like women are here, there, like it's a
And that
solar
man.
system. And there's a man in the middle. So my only thing is that, yes, women are very important in Bihar elections, as you can say from the women as a vote bank, but
Right.
only as a vote bank. There's not much representation that I have seen. In fact, even the left parties, for instance, my only issue was that you only gave ticket to one person, one woman, Divya Gautam. You did not give a ticket to women.
Men
So I
not
feel that
considered bankable. Is there like, is
I
it
think that is coming from a mindset that you think women are not capable, women are not political enough, women can't do much. But if
Mm,
I see Neha Bora from Isa, at the Cockroach Janata Party, I think she's
I
the
know.
most articulate one in a way that she has showed up for Junaid. And see, that's what women do differently, I feel. Some women, I'm not talking about like a lot of women can be either hierarchy enablers or whatever, but she has shown more consistency, more courage, and more political articulation, which is in a way kind of like very measured, but
Mm.
kind of very revolutionary also. And I think that is the leadership that you need right now,
And
which,
it's so true what you said, because the thing is that there isn't also that sort of role modeling, right? When you see someone as proficient in Hindi as she's in English, has real clarity in the way she speaks, how many women I can imagine are looking at her and feeling like this is possible, right? This is
No,
possible.
and also the other thing is that, see, look, I mean, I don't know how controversial it is, but I'll say this. So, for instance, I was at this Jantar Mantar protest, and I know the Gen Z is great when it comes to being vocal, and they have a lot more courage because, unlike us, they're not interested in being the person who's like this people pleasing behavior that came in the generation that kind of we grew up in was different, right? And
Yeah.
now I feel that it actually really harmed us because we were always trying to do this trope of dignity that you be dignified, you be whatever. Yeah, but I feel that, this, abusing, like this is why this whole sanskar culture, all of this is coming about. What I feel is that one of the things that I noticed was very interesting is that at the protest itself, they said Azadi ban karo slogan, like the Azadi slogan was banned, but they said we'll say Bharat Mata ki Jai. Now, I have a problem with that only in the sense that, firstly, the origins of Bharat Mata. Now, you have to look at history. Like, that's why I'm saying humanity. Then I told you that you should do this discussion.
I
Humanity is very
will.
important, right? To understand what we are using and how, right? Again, look at the use of a woman as a Bharat Mata. I think that we need to break free from because that is actually what is imposing this whole culture sanskar on us. Like we are supposed to behave like that, goddesses, right? I mean, we need to step off that, and I think that's what Gen Z has done. And I hope political parties see that and kind of push more women forward in terms of like I do actually really feel women look at politics very differently than men. Women are a very important factor in at least in Bihar elections now that we saw Nitish Kumar kind of like looking at women as a possible constituency itself. And obviously it was studied in great detail because Nitish Kumar did not have a core constituency like the RJT or BJP in that sense, right? The BJP always had the upper caste, RJT always had the Muslim and the Yadav. Then in between you had the US and the other categories. So Nitish stayed really smart, looked at women and saw women had the potential to break like from like whatever was holding them back in terms of caste and class. Now this is not true for all women, but majority, right? What I feel is that the representation of women is still very less in politics. And if you look at representation in terms of leadership, and that's why the women's reservation bill kind of became whatever. But I have seen in all the industries that matter, where public discourses are being shaped, I think they're all led by men who kind of look at women very differently and not capable enough to understand politics. And this I've also heard many times in my own career. But if you look at like, we did one issue in March about how media looks at women, like Phulan Devi, obviously. Now, Phulan Devi story is actually really fascinating. It's a great lesson in politics as to how women are used and then kind of abused and then thrown out, right? Yeah, and Phulan Devi, if you still go to the village, you'll actually every time, like I've gone to that village, I've been there twice. I've found interesting things, right? Like every time you kind of come across, and what we did in that issue was look at how women are referred to in terms of like how they dress. There's a lot of interest in terms of even if you look at crime against women or perpetrated by women, a lot of interest is how did she look like, or like the body, the face, the thing. And if you look at the Sia Goel case, there was a lot of interest in the Sia Goel case because obviously voyeurism, men love this kind of stuff. There's so many other women getting killed. Nobody's talking about that. Look at how paparazzi is framing who wore what to the parliament. I mean, I just find it hilarious, right? Like, so if you look at all these photographs, because that's what we are consuming and that's what we are expected to consume as for women leaders. Nobody's talking about what men are wearing, maybe a little bit, but not so much in detail. But every day you'll see like a Kangna Ranaut carrying Hermes or whatever, Dimple Yadav wearing this one wearing that. I mean, that is the discussion I'm saying. So, I'm just saying that.
Yeah, reducing their political weight to entertainment is really, I mean, and end of the day, if you think of it in the bigger picture, the losses to the country, it's not the particular loss to that woman. You're really like, you're underserved as a country when you don't recognize the power that women's political consciousness can bring. So no, that's a great point. We'll finish with again circling
Yeah.
back to Prashant Kishore. One of the things, of course, is that obviously at a time like this, emotions are very high, right? People get carried away, swept away. So, if from a pragmatic point of view, from someone who studied Bihar quite closely, if you were to say, and this is hypothetical, but if you were to say that there were three things to focus on to really cement this win and expand in the benefit of Bihar, what are those things you would say?
Okay, the one thing is I've not really studied Bihar. I've felt Bihar. Like,
Fair,
if I'm
all
from
right.
Bihar, three things that can help Prashant Kishore, you mean? Look, he's
Yes,
a
and the
political
part.
strategist. He knows better what can fix him. I think one of the things that he needs to probably do is maybe be less arrogant and less sure, because politics in Bihar or anywhere else operates differently. And now we see a lot of this backlash against arrogance, right? Which is
Mm,
what Gen Z has taught us. And I think there's a lot more accountability now in terms of, because this generation is born with this video phone. So they're documenting everything. So maybe because, they'll dig up like things that you said like some 20
yes.
years ago and kind of like contrast it, whatnot. So I think that is one. The second is, I think, look at caste and class also in Bihar, because that is also with employment and education. I think they're all interlinked. I think you need to start that conversation in a different way, in maybe a
Yeah.
more Prashant Kishore way, but you have to kind of look at that. And I think the other thing is to not have attack as your main game thing, like saying, no, we fail or whatever. It's a democracy. Anybody can get elected. That's the beauty of our democracy, that you don't have to be literate. Like, you don't have to have a certificate, right?
Mm.
Which I also saw in Jantar Mantar protest saying, a lot of times, Jahil Gawar and Hum Pare.
Yeah, but
And I just thought that was not okay, not dignified enough. So I
Mm.
think maybe to call somebody now we fail, Satvi fail, which is also being said for Samrat Chaudhary. I think we need to get beyond personal attacks. I think that there was
Mm.
a lot of that I saw in Bihar elections. And I think a lot more transparency is the fourth one that I would expect from Jal Suraj as to who they are. I still don't know
Who they
what they are about in Bihar's politics. Like if you ask me about RJT, JTU, I can tell
would
you,
know.
right? Like I would know because they have been there, and so I don't know who they are. Are they a mix of RJT, JTU, or is it like a BJP with a new kind of agenda, like a fresh thing? Who I don't know who are they. So I think that they need to work on a bit more. Yeah,
And
I
I think
guess.
what you said, one last point, adding to everything you said, is what's the plan, right?
Yeah.
What's the plan? So you made a lot of statements, you've said a lot of right things, which seem commonsensical things. They may not be novel, but you've said them with conviction. Now the follow through is what people will be waiting for. And thank you so much, Chinky. Always such a pleasure
Yeah.
to talk to you.